There's a huge perception gap. People don't know the jobs are here. They aren't aware of the pathways to our jobs. It's one of our biggest challenges, is that there are many pathways to opportunity. So it's incumbent upon all of us, both from the company and the corporate side, the philanthropic sector, the education sector, and then also the industry itself, to make sure people understand that there are pathways to these jobs.
Hi, I'm Lauren Espin. On today's episode of The Optimistic Outlook, we're diving into the most challenging issue facing U.S. industrial manufacturing, the lack of enough skilled workers to fill hundreds of thousands of jobs. We're excited to be joined by Carolyn Lee, president of the Manufacturing Institute. Carolyn comes from a family that has been in manufacturing for generations, and now she has dedicated her career to raising up the next generation of American workers. Guiding our conversation is guest host David Etzwiler, CEO of the Siemens Foundation, which has a mission focused on workforce development and education. You're about to take part in an inspiring and revealing conversation about how we can ensure U.S. manufacturing remains a global powerhouse. Over to you, David and Carolyn.
Carolyn, so good to be in conversation with you again. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, David. It's great to be here again.
Look, you grew up around manufacturing, which is really the topic of the day here. Your father and your grandfather participated in manufacturing. I'd love to just start with some of your memories about what that looked like from your standpoint as a child and how that influences the work that you're doing today.
You know, I can't help but think whenever I think about my father and grandfather and their experience in manufacturing, all of a sudden I start hearing in my head that I need to be productive because people need to be productive. And that was a big driver for both my father and my grandfather, and something I tell my own kids now every day. But I grew up, yes, in a family of manufacturers. Actually, my grandparents met in a watch factory pre-World War II. So even my grandmother was in the sector for a little while. And so what I grew up knowing how important it is that we make things here. My father and grandfather had a screw machine business, so small pieces. I always told people when I was a kid that they made nuts and bolts. And but you know, when you start there, the things just keep growing. And of course, we need lots and lots of hundreds of thousands of small manufacturers like them to make the things that we make every day in this sector. So yeah, I grew up all around it, and now I get to see things that are very different. It's a very different manufacturing environment and something we're all really excited about.
It's interesting because your memories, my grandfather was in manufacturing as well, and I'm thinking through sort of the hope and the satisfaction that provided him and really the family and the community and whatnot, and just that proud history in America of what that means. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that, right, in this country, about that hope and opportunity still exists. And I know you and I have chatted in the recent past about this poll in the Wall Street Journal, where 70% of Americans are saying the American dream is now no longer attainable. This idea that you can work hard and provide for yourself and your family, that you can advance your economic and social position. And I'd love to just ask you a little bit more about that, because we have 500,000 open jobs in manufacturing, for example. Help us make sense of what's happening out there with the analysis that you're doing at the Manufacturing Institute.
Yeah, I think really what there's a huge perception gap. People don't know the jobs are here. I will say, you know, there was a big increase in the perception of manufacturing as a sector and of about careers after COVID. Parents and students and kids that were, you know, high school and entering college ages, they realized that manufacturing jobs really stayed right during COVID, that when much of the service sector stopped and kind of everything went pause for a minute, manufacturing kept going because we were so essential to the economy and to the recovery. And so, you know, that really improved our status. But you're right, there is a lot of data that people don't feel like the American dream is necessarily within arm's reach, as it may have been, that it's not just a matter of working hard and being able to have access to so many of the opportunities that we say in the past. Now, I will say what we know in manufacturing is people are not aware of the jobs. They aren't aware of the pathways to our jobs. It's one of our biggest challenges, is that there are many pathways to opportunity. It's something that we've talked about for a long time together, David. And, so it's incumbent upon all of us, both from the company and the corporate side, the philanthropic sector, the education sector, and then also the industry itself, to make sure people understand that there are pathways to these jobs and that all of them require skills. Not all of them require a degree, but all of them required skills. So it's a matter of finding the skill, how to get the skills you need for the job you want. And that's something we focus on every day.
There's tons of opportunities. There are some good examples of that. Tell us a little bit more about specific examples where you're seeing progress, and where are some of the places where we continue to have challenges in developing those workforce training initiatives.
Yeah, there are some really great opportunities out there. And one of the areas that we've been working on at the Manufacturing Institute, and it's really in service of the industry, the broader industry, is maintenance technicians. So, with all of the automated equipment we have in manufacturing today, and it's not just manufacturing, right? Distribution centers and hospital systems, and big box retailers. Everyone has automated equipment. And so maintaining those systems is a huge and growing need. We run an earn and learn program, also known as an apprenticeship program, called FAME. It is the Federation for Advanced Manufacturing Education, and the primary training pathway in FAME is an advanced maintenance technician pathway. And so over the course of 21 months, students are learning everything they need to be able to maintain and repair and engage with all of the automated equipment we have, whether it's the skills on electronics or hydraulics or pneumatics, of course, programmable controls, all of those building blocks that allow you to have a tremendous career in manufacturing today with engaging with all that automated equipment. So FAME, we took it on from Toyota, who created it. They created it back in 2010 to train their own maintenance technicians, and then it scaled to grow to include some of their supply chain and then regional manufacturers. And then we took it on in 2019 with the mission of scaling it nationally. And since then, we've doubled the size of it. There's now 45 FAME chapters in, I think it's 17 states, and rapidly growing. And it's a tremendous pathway where you take mostly students right out of high school, but also some folks in early career, and you give them all the skills and training they need while they're being supported and sponsored by a manufacturer. So we have outstanding graduation rates. 95% of people graduate in the 21-month period, which is unheard of in this training pathway and for a lot of community college training programs. And 95% of the people are hired by those companies that sponsor them and have tremendous 1 year and 3 year retention rates. And so I raise FAME because it's a great example of, we have stories of people who didn't know anything about this, who came in, learned everything they needed to go on to these careers. Now, some of the data we had, and we're getting updated data, but within 5 years, 5 years after graduation, in the first chapter, former students are earning upwards of $95,000 a year. And of course, they came to this program, they had no college debt. And so there's a tremendous pathway here to durable, high-paying, high-demand jobs. And yet, it's incumbent upon us to make sure people know that the path exists and where to find it. And so that's one of the things we're doing by scaling FAME. But that's really a microcosm that as people talk about all this robotics and all the things and the change that is coming, towards us in technology, it's people like to set it up as it's the end of jobs. No, it's a change of jobs and a change of tasks. And the best way to ensure your future in this headwind is by making sure you have the skills that are going to be in demand. And that's what we focus on every day.
Yeah, I love that answer for so many different reasons. I mean, I could just picture young minds and young families getting involved in FAME and understanding what the opportunity is, right? Because so much of what I think we have to do as older folks, right, particularly when we're talking to I don't mean super old, but I mean, as we're talking to high school and folks in their 20s, is help them understand what's possible, right? And what are the roads that can get them there, and what does it pay? And you're tracking data 5 years out, which is really impressive. I mean, that's so helpful to be able to come back to those folks and those families to say $95,000 a year. Virtually no debt, I bet, comes with that as well.
If I could just pick up on one thing you said there, David, and I think this is incumbent upon all of us in industry. A couple years ago, I was out on the road talking to tens of thousands of high school students, mainly, with an initiative that the NAN, the National Association of Manufacturers, and the MI ran. It was called Creators Wanted, and we were really focused on changing the perception of manufacturing careers. And every single student, we went out thinking we need to tell the students about making an impact and the meaning of their jobs. And every single student I talked to said to me, what does it pay? And so it's something that we in industry often kind of shy away from, except what we know is it really does help students see the real tangible benefit. And as they're weighing their options and saying, I'm going to take this short-term part-time job that maybe leads us somewhere, or I'm going to invest in my time and my energy, and I'm going to challenge myself to learn whole new skill set, but it's going to provide me a durable pathway to a high paying job. That's a really attractive, opportunity. And so we need to be upfront and we need to talk about these things more than we probably do.
I would say too that so many of the decision makers or the influence here are folks in the schools and parents as well. And it's so fun to hear your example because we've moved past that moment where folks go, wow, that sounds like a great opportunity for my neighbor's kid, right? Like we've moved it into, wow, that's a great opportunity for my kid or for me. I want to pick up on this conversation about AI and automation. Lots of concerns in society these days about what that means for manufacturing. I think you and I are in an interesting role, right? I'm at Siemens, you're at the Manufacturing Institute. We're seeing tons of skilled jobs opening as a result of AI coming here and reshoring of manufacturing and jobs. Talk to us a little bit about how to adapt to support an AI-ready workforce. What are you all seeing? What are you anticipating? What are you doing?
I don't think a day goes by, right, in our worlds that we aren't talking about not only what's happening with the impact of technology and AI today, but what is coming. And how do we sort through all the different, messages that are out there about what this might mean, particularly for manufacturing careers? What we see is that, look, ever since the Industrial Revolution, new technology, many of which you guys were at the forefront of, right? At Siemens, all the new technology has changed jobs and the definition of our jobs in our sector. Every time a new thing comes, we're having to adjust. So this isn't new. I think it's just faster. And I think the scale of change is so enormous right now because AI feels like this giant, it's what we've seen in movies come to life. And yet at the same time, we've been seeing robotics and being invested on manufacturing plant floors for a long time now. It's been 15, 20 years. Manufacturers have been using AI, vision systems and machine learning to analyze data and to detect flaws in these things for years. So that isn't new. We are creating it. We are creating the systems in manufacturing and we are living in the systems. But what we do know, and this comes from research from our partners at the Manufacturing Leadership Council, which is the digital transformation division of the National Association of Manufacturers. Right now, manufacturers are not using AI at a widespread level on the factory floor. A lot of the headquarters jobs are using it, of course, for data and creative and creating content and all these things. But on the production floor, there is a big gap. That is the biggest gap in manufacturing. And one of the reasons for that is a lack of awareness and some concerns on the behalf of shop floor workers about what does this mean. So we need to start at the beginning. We need to help people get skills and awareness about what AI is. Why is it applicable? Right now, all of us are using large language models in our day-to-day, right? Whether I'm putting things into Gemini because I want a recipe or if I'm trying to figure out, a travel plan. 2 examples in the last 24 hours in my personal life, right? We're used to doing things like that, but people on the production floor might not recognize the applicability to their day to day. So we need to lower those barriers, have people understand. And actually, as I talked about earlier, maintenance technicians, that's a fantastic example of where AI technologies will be hugely advantageous to manufacturers and manufacturing workers, because you're able to look at it and say, okay, this is a process. How do I optimize? And if this thing is what's going on with my machine and there's a failure here, what does that mean? Where can I find the manuals? Where do I find all the information? How do I get to the solution? And then ideally fix it so it doesn't happen again. So I think right now we have to kind of battle the headwinds of the fear factor, which of course is so much of the headlines, and help people see how this is going to help them do their job stronger, better, faster.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the example you're giving is really potentially one of empowerment, right? Something's wrong. I'm at a particular place in the plant. I'm not making a call to my manager who can call an engineer off site, right? I have an agent, right? I have an agent working with me.
Every time there's change, there's a fear factor, right? And so it's really about, but in manufacturing, we have the opportunity and we're constantly living, you know, building a new processes, continuously improving, like the culture pieces are there. And the best way to, shore up your against risk when there's a big headwind is by getting new skills. And so part of the culture change that we need to make as a society is helping people see it's not I'm now at this stage, right? And I'm never going to learn anything new. No, of course you're learning new things. And how do we make that learning and that skills education more accessible to more people so that they can arm themselves and prepare themselves for the future? And I think that is a really empowering, narrative. And that's something we're leaning into.
We've had these conversations with colleagues. It's a fight or flight moment, right? And if you're not nervous, you're not paying attention. But when has that ever not been the case, right? And there's one way to respond that's going to be helpful here, which is get the information, start developing yourself, talk to others about how they're using it, be in the best practices. But it's the same approach really that we've always had in our economy. It just feels a little different to us. Let me shift gears here to another topic you and I are passionate about, which is building ecosystems, right? This idea and this understanding, and you've done it through FAME and in other ways so well, this understanding that no one sector can do this alone, right? And within those sectors, no one company or labor union or community college can do this alone. We have to come together and make this approach together in order to go to scale. I'm wondering, in terms of your impact on building those ecosystems and scaling, what you're seeing, what you're learning that you could pass along to folks who are listening today.
Every company is looking at their own needs and always has, especially when it comes to talent, right? You need what you need in the places with the skills. And that's what's going to make sure that you're being successful. But we know that for too long, manufacturers have faced a skills gap. One of the best things that the MI is best known for is our regular talent study with Deloitte. We've been doing this for about 20 years. And the most recent one found that by 2033, we would need to fill 3.8 million jobs. And of those, half would go unfilled. And that was from 2024. May 24 is when we released that. So much more has happened since then. That was coming on the heels of the CHIPS Act and the IRA and the transportation investment, the infrastructure bill from the Biden administration. And now we have all of this reshoring. We have all of these announcements about investments that companies are going to make to bring more manufacturing here to the U.S. And so the need is even greater. So what we've been saying for a long time, and we've kind of been preaching the gospel of doing this together, of ecosystems, of partnerships, right? No one company can solve a talent challenge. When I get a company who calls me and says, I can see the construction cranes from this mega plant that's going up nearby that they're going to hire 5,000 people, what do I do? The answer is roll up your sleeves and work together as a community to build those talent pools. Now, when my father and my grandfather were coming into manufacturing, manufacturing. Everybody knew someone in manufacturing, right? It was 1 in 5 jobs, 1 in 8 jobs in the country. And so they didn't have this. My father would say to me, we'd hang a sign and people would come, right? We don't live in that world today. Manufacturing is a smaller, but it's just as productive part of the economy. And so we have to make sure that we are growing the talent pool together instead of fighting over the same couple of fish. Let's get more fish, right? Let's build those. And the great thing is, and where we talk about this with manufacturers and regions, and we've been working to develop these ecosystems all over the country for the last few years, to great success. It's really that, working together, eventually we're all each other's customers or each other's suppliers. So there's a really good reason in manufacturing to link arms and do this together. Look, if you're an OEM and you're building that finished product, or you're a supplier and other manufacturers need to buy the thing that you make, it doesn't do you any good if your customers or your suppliers don't have the workforce either. So it's in everyone's self-interest to work together on behalf of the region to build the strength of the region's talent workforce. And where we see that, whether Ohio has done a tremendous job in the last few years, the Ohio Manufacturers Association has led the charge, and we've been supporting their work over a couple of years. They've built a system of industry sector partnerships, and this is like 5 years now, I think, since they really began the effort. And they've done a tremendous job, and it's really working. Alabama's done a tremendous job for about 10 years now, that the state has a really thoughtful plan, but they're relying on manufacturers and the employers to drive the agenda about how training is focused and where the investments are being made. I was down in Alabama a couple months ago announcing another FAME chapter that we were starting on the other side of Huntsville. Huntsville already has a FAME chapter that's hugely successful. Well, they needed another. So they're creating another one. And Drake State was getting the investments and getting support from the state to buy the equipment and build the facility to do it. And so it's really about coming together, linking arms. And that way you're not constantly fighting off I lost my worker for, X amount of dollars. They went to someone down the road. Well, the answer to that is to work together to build the pool. And we're fortunate that we have some great examples at the Institute that are available for manufacturers to learn from and from regions to learn from. We have experts on the team who have done this all across the country, in Texas and California, all over the Central Plains. And we also have FAME, which is a community engagement model where employers are building that ecosystem. And then after you build the platform to train for FAME, well, you know what? San Antonio FAME chapter, they did a great job building on second chance hiring. And because plan on top of the FAME chapter, because all the companies started knowing how to work with one another. There was mutual trust, and now they're able to tap into a whole nother talent pool just because of the example and building that muscle memory of working together.
Yeah, I love one of the themes in this discussion with you is momentum, right? Like we talked earlier about working with younger folks and seeing that momentum and how, it sort of acts as a mirror for other folks who may want to get into that as workers, right? As workers and potential workers. Now you're talking about employers seeing the momentum, right? The flywheel is getting amped up, and it's fun to see what that means for the future of our country. Let me ask you about inclusion. You've been a big proponent of inclusion. We know in this country we have an aging workforce. We know that our replacement rate as a population is below that magic 2.1 number that we need in order to hold even, let alone, to try to grow. We're well below that. And so it's an all hands on deck kind of moment for us, right? Like we need as many trained, willing, able, and super capable workers as ever before. Tell us a little bit about how you've approached that need to attract, develop, and retain workers who maybe traditionally have not been as actively engaged in our economy.
Yeah, it's a great question and certainly a hot topic for a long time now. So really, you're exactly right, David. We need an all of the above. We need everybody who's willing and able. First, we need to let them know we're here and what the jobs are about so that they become interested. And then we need to welcome them all. For us, for inclusion, it's really been a driving agenda point for a long time. And that is really because we need the talent. The math doesn't work. We need everyone to come to the table, whether you're at another job or in another sector now and maybe you're underemployed. Maybe you're only working part-time because of a care situation and there's an opportunity for you to get a more job or a bigger job. Military. We've been running for 8 years now, our Heroes Make America initiative, where we're training folks transitioning out of the military, as well as Guard, Reserve, and veterans and spouses in manufacturing skills and giving them career awareness for manufacturing and then helping place them in jobs so that they can find their second career. I mentioned a little bit ago, second chance hiring. 1 in 4 Americans have been exposed, have had some exposure to the criminal justice system that may make it hard for them to have durable employment. And so we've built toolkits and playbooks and resources that are freely available on our website for employers, particularly manufacturers, to take and to use to build second chance hiring programs in their own communities, because those individuals are in every community all across the country. And their interest and excitement and retention rates for second chance is really high because they are loyal to those who took a chance on them. We also talk about other non-traditional talent pools. And one thing that I know, as women have become a growing part of the manufacturing workforce, but it's still small, right? It's about 50% of the overall labor force are women, because that's 50% of the population, but it's only about 30% of the manufacturing workforce. But what we know, and we've been doing this work for many years, is that by having mentors and role models and colleagues and building a network for non-traditional talent, including women, really helps people see that there's a place for them. So what I always tell companies is, when you're doing something like Manufacturing Day, and I hope every company is, and you're opening the door and you're bringing in the schools locally and parents and educators and influencers, you're letting your young workers talk to the students. I'm too old. I'm someone's mom, right? I had teenagers and they go, oh, there's a mom, right? So let the young workers talk to those high school students because they're more relatable. Let your students who might be non-traditional, who came through a different pathway, maybe they came out of the military, or they came through another part of the economic sector, or maybe they had a different kind of training. Let those people be the voices, because students can't be what they can't see. They need to see, oh, there's someone like me here. I'm not going to stick out, right? That I have someone I can gravitate to and talk to. And all of those things are really helpful when it comes to non-traditional talent. The other thing that's always part of the conversation, and this is something that my colleagues at the National Association of Manufacturers advocate for, is we do need a rational, immigration reform. We need to bring the best and the brightest from around the world and have them help grow this sector. We have a long history of that. And that's part of the equation as well, just because, as you said, the math doesn't work. We're not having enough economic growth and population growth. And manufacturing is one of the older economic sectors. So we need to make sure we're getting ahead of that and bringing the next generation in.
I'm prompted, too, to think about some of the work that we're doing right now to engage folks from marginalized communities, right? We know in this country that 37% of the people in this country say that they do not have the financial ability to absorb a $400 unplanned expense, either with their credit or with their savings, right? 37%. So what does that mean of trying to asking somebody to move from, say, being a barista at Starbucks is one example, into manufacturing job? For the two of us, whether that's daycare or childcare or transportation, that may not be a prohibiting piece. For a good share of the folks we want to attract into this economy, that is prohibitive. We're working with Family and Workers Fund. I know other folks have different ways of operating it. But to be able to bridge people to a job through training so that they can make that kind of money, and provide their own childcare, daycare, et cetera. We still have a ways to go there, but those are really important things to understand how folks need help to be bridged. They want to participate, they will participate, and they are great workers, but we have to help bridge folks to that job.
Yeah, that is such an important aspect of this. There are so many barriers to full-time employment for folks. Childcare has been such a huge topic, particularly since COVID. And there have been some great examples of companies who have stood up and whether it's subsidies or creating their own childcare or helping just local childcare entities be created, right? Because there's not enough facilities. But it's small barriers. It's that $400. My brakes went out in my car. I can't afford the steel-toed boots, and those are small dollar, big impact. And it's really you're to be commended for leading work there. That you're helping people overcome these small things that have such a huge impact in their ability to progress. And this is an area where there isn't a public policy. It is really about corporate and philanthropic leadership about where there are opportunities to help close some of those gaps and reduce those barriers. So that's great work. And it's tremendous that you guys are digging in on that and helping lead that, because that is a real life barrier for too many workers all across the country.
I want to return to the conversation about your father and your grandfather. And I asked you to go back in time. I want to ask you to go forward in time now and think about if they were here and you could give them a tour of a modern day manufacturing plant. What do you think their reactions would be? What do you think their biggest surprises would be to today's manufacturing plant?
When you said that, I start thinking about how bright all of the facilities are in, right? I mean, I've been to factories that I think they're neater than my kids' rooms, right? You could probably eat off the floor of many of factories today and sit down and have a picnic in the middle. And that is not what the screw machine factory of the 1980s looked like when I was there and doing small jobs for my father and grandfather. And, when I've had the privilege, this is the beginning of November now. In October, I did a couple of different factory tours with high school students, and to go along with them, right, and see their eyes light up because of the technology that's there, because of seeing, oh wait, this isn't all manual, but I'm using an iPad-like device, a touchscreen device to manipulate this 5-axis cutting machine. And I remember the hand reel and dad moving the lathe, right? And the difference between what I saw as a kid, what I saw even 20, 40, 30 years ago, I don't want to age myself, let's call it 25 years ago, versus what we see today is so dramatic. The technology is being created, right? And this is a thing that we always talk about manufacturing and it's not like it used to be and it's so much better, and we're trying to disprove a negative. When we talk to kids today, they're very excited about the technology. They're excited about the technology they grew up with, right? They're all digital natives. The high school kids today, they grew up in a world that this is always how it's been. They don't remember when cable became a thing, right? And so when you talk to them and you see and you show them the opportunity to take the tactile technologies they're used to in their lives and work with them and to create new things, it is a no-brainer, right? We don't have to disprove what I saw when I was, 12 on the factory floor, because they don't know that. That's ancient history to them. But when we lean into that, we are building the future. We are building the things that make their lives better, that is going to, cure cancers and diseases, or, flying cars or automatic, autonomous vehicles, all these things. They're like, well, yeah, that should exist, and I want to be part of that. So there's this wonder in seeing it live that is just fantastic. But I think if I brought my dad and my grandfather in, they would, feel like they were watching probably Star Trek in some ways. And it's just, they would be living the future. And that is how quickly we have evolved and how quickly we will continue to evolve. And that's why we got to make sure people are getting the skills to be able to ride along with us and help lead that evolution.
I'm going to ask you on a final question. I'm going to put you in a place of going into the future, because, we know that optimists are also realists. And we know 10 years ago, we had workforce issues to address. We've done that to some degree, but we've got a long way to go still. As you look ahead in 5 years and 10 years, tell us what your hopes are for us as a country. We're working on the American dream here again, right? And this has wide-ranging impacts, not just on the family, but on our institutions as well. Help us understand what that ideal 5-year, 10-year plan looks like and how we get there.
I took this job a little over 8 years ago. I told my kids who were young at the time that it's my new job was going to help people get good manufacturing jobs so they could raise their families. And that was something that, they were in grade school, they could understand. And so I think 5 years out from now, we will have fully leaned into that manufacturing won't be viewed, particularly like, skills-based jobs in manufacturing, production-based jobs in manufacturing won't be the other, like I ended up there. No, I sought that out. And there is an amazing pathway for me to go make a very good living, to have good pay and benefits, to be in a culture I enjoy, to be able to build something, make something, and see what I do every day and how that is making the world better. And so I do think that companies more and more will be leaning into building and participating in those ecosystems to strengthen it. They will know that this isn't going to be fixed by some policy switch. There is no easy button on what ails us on workforce. It is really about rolling up the sleeves and building a continuous momentum and continuous, flow of people. And I think manufacturers are leaning more into, look, we have been great employers for a really long time. We just don't brag very well. We're busy doing our day-to-day thing. And so instead, let's talk about the successes, talk about your values, talk about your culture, and why working for you is an advantage. And when we do that, we know that people will come and stay. And that if we're doing those things and we're working regionally, look, are we going to have still a big open jobs number? Well, I hope so, because hopefully we'll be growing so quickly that we will constantly be running up the mountain. But that our retention rates will be really high. The pathways will be more available. Companies will know that they can work together to solve this on the ground and do the very best things and continuously improve to build their most important resource and their most important investment, which is their people. And that we'll be singing that from the mountaintops enough that people will come, and then we'll be there to help train them so that they can take on these jobs and help strengthen our families, our regions, and our country.
Love that, Carolyn. If your father and grandfather were listening today, they would be so proud of the work that you're doing and how you're changing people's lives and continuing to do that. We're really honored to have you as part of the podcast today. Thank you again.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. Thank you for all that you are doing. You're a passionate spokesperson on behalf of workforce and investment, and the community leadership that Siemens shows and has always shown is really something that could be continue to be emulated. So thank you for the leadership, and I'm glad to join you today.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Optimistic Outlook. Be sure to tune in for more conversations with leaders shaping technology for a better tomorrow. Please subscribe to Optimistic Outlook wherever you listen to your podcasts, and be sure to share the podcast with a friend or colleague.